Welcome back to another episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, the show where we have honest and real conversations like these. I'm your host, Sayan, as some of you would know, and I'm really glad that you're spending this time with us, folks. My guest today is a coach and healing practitioner whose work sits at this intersection of the nervous system, subconscious reprogramming, and energetic healing. And she's here to break down why so many people feel stuck even when they're doing all these things right. Her name is Brheanna, founder of Light and Breezy Coaching. And this conversation, I hope, would give you a complete new way to think about how change actually works. So, Rihanna, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you with me, and hoping to have a great conversation. So, a little disclaimer for all the listeners here.
Hey, dear listeners. Before we begin, a quick note from Healthy Mind Payavik. This episode is created for educational and informational purposes only. The views shared by our guests are their own and may not reflect those of the host or network. Nothing in this conversation should be taken as medical, legal, financial, or professional advice. Please consult a qualified professional before making important decisions. We encourage you to listen with curiosity, think independently, and use this content as a starting point for reflection, not a substitute for professional guidance. Now, settle in and enjoy the conversation.
So, Brheanna, before we get into your soul of the whole work, which sits us at energetic healing, I'm curious as to what brought you here, because I think a lot of people who do this kind of work came to it through some lived experience first. So what was the moment for you in your life when you decided that you needed to steer this conversation, perhaps find a deeper layer to healing than what most people would think it is about?
Yeah, so I had multiple places in my life, but the big one would be my near-death experience in 2020. I was shown the quantum field and how we were all connected, and not just us as individuals or people, but everything, every atom, every molecule, everything is connected to the divine lines of the quantum field. So I started to really advance into the quantum healing area quickly.
Wow. And so I have heard about the quantum field, and recently I came across this particle called the God's particle, also the Higgs boson. So that was an interesting discovery in 2012, I guess, as far as I could remember. So what aspect of it, Brianna, touched you the most in that aspect? Was it simply how the quantum field theory pretty much described the entire nature of the universe? Or what was it that really intrigued
Well,
you?
I think the part that really stuck out to me is how much our physical world contradicts anything outside of, if you can't see it, it's not real. We're taught all these things, but when you really take the blindfold off, there's so many things we don't see. For example, your eye only can perceive 350 to 750 nanometers of light frequency, all that alone.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of the things we don't see is radio frequency, microwaves, infrared. There's multiple things happening in our physical world that we can't see with our eyes. And even your Wi-Fi, people are like, oh, it's not real because you can't see it, but it's as real as you and me sitting here. I kind of explained to people that your physical body is actually just the result of your 7 subtle fields, which are connected to the quantum field as well as you. But your physical body is the result of those subtle fields. So, for example, you have your physical body, and then you have your emotional body, your mental body, your spiritual body, your astral body, casual body, cathartic body, and so on. And all of these are creating an effect on the physical body. And so when we talk about energy healing, what people don't understand is that your energy field is just as much influencing you as anything in your physical reality. If I would argue even more so. For example, like your emotional body, which is where we hold our emotions or where they are stored and they trickle through us on repeat. This is why a lot of people, when an event that happened at a certain time of year, they get the physical connection to what had happened to them. Like if you were in a car accident, you might have healed, but your knee was hurt in the accident. It starts to hurt again at that time because it's trickling down through your physical body, through the emotions, because you're connected to it emotionally. So what I work with is helping people to heal those higher frequencies and energies and those fields so that the physical body can also heal.
Yeah, that's fundamental. I mean, so I'm glad that we are diving a little bit on that, territory of physics, perhaps. And yeah, the quantum theory is really intriguing. I mean, again, I think this is not really something that is totally, I would say, very aligned with what we are here to discuss. But since, I totally resonate with what you said. And, Brheanna, there's this one property in the entire quantum theory that says that your observation, right, it can change reality. And what it really means is that, think of it like this, right? So like you just mentioned, that there's only a specific range of wavelength and that your eye can perceive, and there's really so much going on that you cannot perceive in the physical world. And that is so true. I mean, you in that aspect, really, just by observing something, you're actually changing its quantum properties. But I believe that's a topic for a different discussion.
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah,
because that's really
but it's true. It is true. And actually, so where this all ties together, though, where we're talking about subconscious, it actually very much what we're talking about with the subtle fields, it triggers the subconscious because your subconscious is constantly filtering what we don't even perceive, but it's still happening. This is why I tell people it's really important to be careful what you listen to at night when you're sleeping, because your subconscious is still recording everything around you. And so what happens is that our subconscious creates a pattern, and that pattern feeds our conscious mind, which is what feeds into our nervous system that we are either unsafe or whatever. So that pattern from your energetic quantum fields are actually running through the subconscious and creating a physical break through the nervous system. So again, this is why we have something that will give us anxiety all of a sudden where you're like, I'm fine. I feel like everything is good around me because it's something from those higher fields running through the subconscious, and the subconscious is kicking it out into your conscious field and into the nervous system. So yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of teach people this is the advanced version of mind, body, soul. Your mind being the subconscious and consciousness, the body is the nervous system, and then the soul being in the quantum fields. And all of those work together. And I actually tell people, I'm like, it's like an infinity symbol. The way that I see and perceive the quantum field so your subconscious kind of sits at the axiom of those things, and it's constantly looping up and down. And so this is where, if you want to make real transformations, you have to realize that your physical body is feeding the subconscious is feeding into the quantum is feeding the subconscious, and it creates this loop. And so to break it, you have to identify. And like you said, once you identify it, you actually change the quantum field and you can change your reality. So that's what I work with people on, how to use that same principle that you brought up. So it was interesting, and to how you can actually make real, true change in your physical reality.
Yeah, I think the way you tied it to subconscious realm, I think that is something that not a lot of people would actually spend too much time thinking about. But it's interesting. Like if you sit with it and try to analyze, you would realize that there's a very narrow line that actually ties the subconscious to that quantum realm that we're talking about. So, Brheanna, let me ask you this: the subconscious patterns that you're talking about, like how do these, tend to show up on a regular day? If you can share.
Oh, well, everyone is different. So your subconscious, I always like to tell people it's like the SD card of your soul, right? So it's not just what's happened in this lifetime, it's all lifetimes that you have experienced. And so sometimes it can keep us playing a loop life after life after life. It's not just this one. And here's a good example. It kind of comes into a tick. But my daughter one day, about a year, 2 years ago, she said to me, she's like, something about how cute it is that I click my tongue every time I walk into a room, like a threshold. I'm like, no, I don't. She's like, yes, you do. Soon as she said it, I started to notice I absolutely walk into rooms and I just click my tongue. I didn't know I did it, never even occurred to me. But that is exactly those things that are in the subconscious that we are playing out in the physical. And then once it's brought to us or it's shown to us or we bring it out to the light to observe, then we can actually transmute that. And now I don't do it, but it took someone actually pointing it out to me for me even to realize that it was something I was doing. So for every person, there is a pattern that you are reliving or replaying until you look at it and objectively do the healing and identify and observe it, and then you can transmute it or alchemize it.
Yeah, I think that was one really solid example, and I think a lot of people could relate to instances like that. That's something that you did not know was happening doesn't mean that it wasn't happening. It was just that it was all in the subconscious patterns, right? So it's interesting that when and how that translates, that subconscious patterns, it comes to the surface. We tend to go deeper into this territory. So Brheanna, could you walk us through maybe what actually it looks like in your work when you're working with someone on this topic, on the nervous system, the subconscious, and the energetic field? So where do you start with all of this? Because I know that since we are talking about energetic field and the subconscious, and now that we understand that it is tied to a lot of degree deeper down the layer, how do you know when something has genuinely shifted versus feeling temporarily better?
So every person is here with a different mission, different path. So my process with everyone is going to look a little different. But if you've gone through a lot of physical trauma in your life, the first place I would start is going to be somatic healing of the body, working with the nervous system regulation. I always try to hit the regulation of the nervous system first with everyone because I am sure you've all heard, raise your vibration, raise your frequency, this is how you manifest and, all that. But you cannot do those things if you are in a dysregulated nervous system because your nervous system is telling your physical field that we're not safe. So expansion isn't possible in a place of fight or flight or survival. So the first thing you want to do is get your nervous system regulated. So breath work, meditation. I love doing like positive affirmations or subliminals so that you're actually refocusing on the subconscious while working in the nervous system so that whatever is spitting out of the subconscious into your physical reality can be eased. So to work with that, you can find them on YouTube all over, but 21-day cycles and 21 days of positive, whatever it is for you that you might be struggling with. So say you're struggling with depression or anxiety, there's subliminals that will work with you on affirmations. I am is usually a good one. I am, loved. I am, trusting. I am, all those things. But regulating that nervous system is always the first thing you want to do because working with that first of all, it eases the person, the physical person, but everything that's going to trickle into the quantum field as we work into the deeper subtle fields is going to affect that nervous system. And your nervous system will kick it out if you feel unsafe or if it feels unsafe. So you switch out of you have your central nervous system, then you have your sympathetic nervous system, then you have your parasympathetic nervous system. You have multiples, but we're just going to stick with those. But your parasympathetic nervous system is when you are in receptivity, when you are in creativity, when you are in authenticity, love, all those things. But when you are in fight or flight, you switch into your sympathetic nervous system and you start to reject even love energies and frequencies. So that's the first place I usually start with people. I do offer what's called the signature service that I have, and it's 30 minutes where I get to know someone and understand exactly what patterns are repeating, what is creating interferences or blocks. Is it emotional? Is it mental? Is it astral? Is it spiritual? Whatever that is. And then I curate healing sessions based on that. Because some people have gone through a lot of physical trauma. Some people brought a lot of baggage from past lives. Some people have a lot of ancestral karma. And all of those will be treated differently.
Okay. So it's interesting. I mean, it's not like you have hard and fast rule to actually understand what that person is going through. The sense, in what degree has a particular trauma affected him or her. So curious to know, Brheanna, where do you even start in those sessions? Like, if you could share, because I think even if you understand a person to a certain degree, those patterns can still resurface and can feel like, I mean, There's a term in Japanese that I'm not really able to recall at the moment, but what it means essentially is that, there are deeper layers of a person that, the person himself doesn't know, right? And it's
Yep.
kind of an interesting philosophy. So with you working with people, right, that's a totally, I would say, a difficult thing to do because, we have so many different layers in us, different
hmm
traumas that have affected us since childhood because those traumas actually tend to live on throughout our entire life, right? And shape our experiences and how we interact with the physical world, at least. But yeah, definitely there are healing processes as we speak right now. So, where do you even start understanding a person? Because the way that you start, I think it might be a good framework for the listeners today to understand where they could start asking those questions to themselves.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is like, what have you noticed first? That's the first thing because we could start talking to your mind, right? What have you noticed? Now, we can do healing sessions, right? We will. That's what we start out. But I'll give a good example of my own life. After my near death experience, I went through a divorce. Everything is fine. Him and I are like really good friends, but I ended up meeting a man and it didn't work out. And, I had a heartbreak and it was way worse than I was even anticipating as far as like the pain in like my heart space. And so I asked my guides, I was like, why was that one so significantly painful? And what I was advised by my own guides is that I have never had my heart broken from a healed heart space. Every heartbreak that I had ever had in my life, I had already been impacted by levels of trauma. So when I was having romantic relationships before, I was always in the lens of trauma, survival, fight or flight. That was the first time I had entered something that was heart open space. So that's where we go into the levels that you're kind of talking about with the layers, right? So you can heal a part of you and that piece, but you are going to go into a deeper level. It's the understanding. That's the big part that changes transformation is your understanding that this is a journey.
Lovely.
You are going to go deeper and deeper. And the more you look at something, so you're never going to be like everything. I mean, the way that you perceive it is going to be better, right? So even like a month ago, I went through this pretty, low point and I immediately got right back into my journaling, got right back into my nervous system regulation because now I understand that I'm not being punished. This is something for me to learn and evolve out of. So I ask myself questions like, why am I experiencing this? Why am I experiencing this again or a pattern or, this is new, whatever it is, but it's my thought about it is not it used to be more victim mentality. This always happens to me. I'm always in these cycles. And it's how you perceive something that's going to happen and how you're going to look at it. So I do scribing, and this is a great one. So if you don't know what scribing is, automatic writing. So when I talk to my guides, I'll write and journal, they'll communicate with me through it. And about 4 years ago, I was scribing and I had wrote a sentence from a movie, and the movie is called The Guardian by Kevin Costner, where they are rescue swimmers. I didn't even know the movie very well, but it came through in my scribe. And in that movie, Kevin Costner says, and he's an instructor. He says the only difference between you and the victim is the mindset in which you entered the water. And the more I thought about that in the level of spirituality, it made so much sense because you're still entering the same chaos, right? It's waves crashing and storm or whatever's happening, boats sinking, whatever the situation, chaotic situation. It's how you enter it and how you perceive it. Do you stay calm? Do you look at it and go, okay, there's something here to be observed and witnessed, felt, processed? Or do you shut down? You distract yourself? Do I got to go and, substance or, you know, hanging out with people just to avoid. And that's the difference. So I work with people in looking at something from a deeper level and not running away from what needs to be looked at and observed, felt, or even released. A big part is that people hold on to their trauma, their pain. And this always kind of rubs people the wrong way. But I'm like, a lot of people don't know who they are without it. So they're in fact wanting to heal it, but they're pulling it back in because the idea of being someone without that pain that they've held on to forever, some people decades, some people their whole life, they don't know who they are without it. So they actually would rather hold on to that pain than to release it and really let it go, because then they would have to find out who they are again without that pain.
Yeah. I think that's really an important distinction because, again, the quote that you mentioned from the movie, I think when I'm thinking about it, I think it not just means a lot in the spiritual world, but it also means something in the quantum realm and the subconscious realm as well. What you feel at the moment when you enter a new door, right? It is something that you carry throughout that whole journey until you open another door. So I think that has been really instrumental for, at least for me, and I'm sure a lot of listeners listening to this right now who can, you know, feel the whole, I would say, process of where one can or one should start rather, right? And again, that mindset, Brheanna, that you mentioned earlier, I think that is something instrumental in achieving that. So I'm sure that might be the best note to perhaps wrap this up on. And arguably, that's one of the most compassionate things I think that I've heard in the last few days, because I would say not just it brought a lot of spirituality, but there's a fine mix of spirituality with, I would say, proven science, like not, and all of spirituality is proven science, right? So I think this conversation was one where it was kind of a mix of both. And I think that would really stay with me. So I want to ask you one last question, Brheanna, before we wrap this off. So for listeners who actually resonated with what we just talked about right now and would want to connect with you and perhaps want to connect for the mentorship that you offer, where can people find you at and what's the best place for them to find you at?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find all of my books, all of my blog is really interesting. I talk a lot about this on there at lightandbreezycoaching.com, and you can reach out to me on there. There's a spot you can contact me directly. You can book all of my services through there, and links to all the podcasts and shows I've been on around there too.
Brilliant. So I'll include that in the show notes, folks, so that you could easily reach out to Brheanna. And I think what I'm really taking away from this conversation, that healing really is not willpower problem. I think it never was. And when you say real healing, it only happens when we stop trying to think our way out of what that situation, that room, that body is or might be holding, right? And once you understand it that way, that also, Brheanna, you said towards the end, that quote particular, I think that would change pretty much everything for you also. Folks, I just want to thank you for spending this time with us on Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. Unfortunately, we hit today's minute mark, and Brheanna, one last time, I want to thank you for breaking this down in a way that felt very grounded and genuinely useful. So to everyone listening, thanks for being here on Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. If today's conversation did give you something to think about, or at least something to think about, let it stay with you, and please do share it with someone who might hear it, because we would be back soon with another honest conversation about what it actually means to live well. So till then, folks, this has been Sayan, and take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.